Hi, this is James. This week's episode of Basic Brewing Radio is an experiment in a couple of ways. We brew an experimental beer, and we continue to experiment with video. There's both an audio and a video version of this show. The video version is a bit shorter because I edited out the mailbag segment. However, the mail is still in the audio version. You can find a link to the video version on our site. And for those of you interested in more video episodes, I'm planning to post an RSS feed that will be for video only. So check into basicbrewingradio.com to see if I've got that figured out. Let us know what you think of this experimental podcast. We hope you like it. Welcome to Basic Brewing Radio for Thursday, January 12th, 2006. I'm James Spencer, and with me is my good friend Steve Wilkes.
James, thanks for having me back. It's great to be back on Basic Brewing Radio.
Well, thanks for being here. And welcome. I don't know if we should change the name of the show when we're simulcasting or not, but we are simulcasting a video cast again, as well as having the audio portion.
Yep.
Since we got some good response last time from people who like to sit and watch us drink.
Yeah, well, that was my wife's reaction. They just sat and watched you drink?
Well,
I said,
yeah. And I just realized I have a mic cable sticking out of my pants, so I'm going to put that on the floor.
My partner.
Yeah, we're going to be informal today, just because we're going to have some fun.
Yeah, and we're going to make a little beer.
We're going to experiment, because part of the fun of making beer is playing around and finding new things to do, and discovering new good stuff.
Good stuff.
So what we're going to do is we're going to make a six-pack.
We're going to make a six-pack.
We're going to make a six-pack of beer today.
12-ounce beers.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, we're not actually going to bottle them and we're going to make a six-pack's worth of beer.
Okay, you owe me a Coke.
So I figured, I wanted to make a small batch, but you want to make an increment, So I figured if we could make 3/4 of a gallon of beer, that will technically give us enough for 8 beers. So we've got a fudge factor there.
Now, there is kind of a serious point to this. I mean, it's fun, but if I am wanting to try a new recipe, this is a way to do it without investing in a lot of stuff.
That's right.
Or a new style that you've just never tried before, and I want to see if I like that or not.
Yeah, if you want to
make a six-pack.
If you want to make a big old beer, like this is going to be a fairly large IPA, and you may hear jingling every now and then. That's the dogs walking in front of the camera, because we're in my kitchen. So, if you're listening or you're watching, you're not going to see the dogs. But if you hear the jingling,
it's not Santa.
No, that's my dogs.
Okay.
So what we're going to make is an IPA, and I figured it out last night. The target gravity is 1080 or 1.080. Our volume is 3 quarts or 3/4 of a gallon.
3/4 of a gallon.
And our IBUs I figured to be about 74. Although it may be tricky with the small batch. So what we've got are ingredients. You want to walk us through the ingredients? Do you remember what our ingredients are, Steve?
This is 1 pound, 5.3 ounces of light malt extract. Is that right?
That is correct. Okay. Or in other words, 1 1/3 pounds of light dry malt extract.
Right.
We were playing with our new digital scale today. That's why he knew it was exactly 1 and 5.3.
It's a great scale. Yeah. And this is altogether. This is a half ounce of Cascade, right?
Correct.
And this is
pellets.
Well, yes.
For those who are listening,
this is 0.1 ounce, 0.1 ounce, and 0.3 ounces.
Correct.
Right?
And we're going to be bittering with 0.3 ounces of Cascade pellets.
Right.
We're going to be flavoring with 1/10 of an ounce.
1/10 of an ounce.
And we're going to throw
hops.
some finishing aroma hops at the end, 1/10.
Now, I noticed that we don't have any Irish moss or anything like that handy. Are we going to use that?
I thought about that, but, you usually use, half a teaspoon for 5 gallons?
Not very much. So maybe we just don't need it.
I just didn't want to worry about it. And
if the beer's a little cloudy, either it'll be cloudy or it'll clarify in the bottle as it conditions. I'm not worried about that.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to enter a competition with this one.
You're not?
Well, I might. You never know. And we're using, this is a starter of California ale yeast.
Okay.
So, I thought, well, I don't want to pitch a whole unit of brand new yeast from the store in this little sample beer. Mm-hmm. So what I did was I had some California ale yeast that I'm going to make or use to make a beer later on, and I just made a starter, a 1 quart starter. And what we'll do is just mix that up. I started it last night, and it's bubbling.
That's
good.
Pretty happy.
Let's show it's bubbling pretty darn good on top there. It's nice and frothy. Mm-hmm. And what we'll do is we'll just mix that up, and we'll just pitch a little bit of that into our little beer, and let it go at that. And then there'll be plenty left over to ferment the 5-gallon batch later on. So
okay.
Shall we get started?
Yeah, let's do. Let's make some beer.
We decided, and we've never done this before, so this is a guess, but we want 3 quarts of water in the end. Mm-hmm. So I predicted that we would boil off maybe half a gallon in an hour.
That's what we're gonna.
So it's what we're going to shoot for. We're going to put 1 1/4 gallons of water in our brew pot. And
shall I pour?
Please pour. And I will measure out. I'll be over here on the sidelines, measuring out a quart. And I'm sure this is interesting for the listening audience. We're not saying anything. As you'll notice, we're using an enamel brew pot, and this is the first brew pot that I ever used back when I first got into brewing. Now, try not to make the place look trashy, Steve. Come on.
Okay.
Let's get organized. So there we've got.
It looks like beer already.
Is it? It's a little clearer that
It's a session beer.
Yeah.
You can drink a lot of that.
Yes, a whole lot. Watch your hands. Here we go. All right. Now we got our fire, and we're coming up.
Okay.
And there's been some discussion. In fact, there was an email about pots. And in fact, maybe this is a good time to talk about that while we're coming up to boil.
Yeah.
This is from Jason in San Jose, California, I'm assuming, who said, my local homebrew shop owner has been brewing for over 20 years. He insists that a wort can pick up metallic flavors from aluminum pots. When I heard one of your guests, I think it was John Palmer, and it was, recommend aluminum pots, I was quite surprised. So this is not on the subject of enamel pots, but it is on the subject of what our pots are made of. Mm-hmm. You bought an aluminum pot recently, Steve. Mm-hmm. In your experience?
I haven't tasted metallic flavors from it. Now, I may not have, I don't know. But I've always used an aluminum pot this size for a secondary boiling, because I've done split boils most of my life. And my other pot was a stainless steel pot, I guess 5 gallons. But I recently bought a commercial grade aluminum stock pot that is it's like 50 quarts. I mean, it's really big. It's really, really a nice pot. And made some beer in it. I haven't tasted anything off in it. So I don't know. I think this might be one of those things where some people can taste it and some people can't.
Or it may be a myth.
Or maybe a myth.
The more I think about it, and the more experience that I have with that aluminum pot, because I've done a couple batches with your aluminum pot, borrowing it, and I'm thinking that the metallic flavors from the aluminum is probably a myth. It would have to be proven to me, because in my experience I haven't tasted it. Now I've just poured a beer. This is your Amerikolsch, that we tried on the last show, and just to do a sample. This beer was made with the aluminum pot.
All right.
And cheers, by the way.
Cheers. Cheers.
Smells great.
It's pretty good beer.
That's tasty. I don't taste any off flavors at all. I certainly don't taste a metallic off flavor. So at least with this style of beer, or the style of beers that we've used or brewed, we haven't noticed.
I haven't had a problem with it.
And there are other people that swear against. Let me take our yeast away from the boiling pot here. There are other people that swear that enamel pots are bad.
Why is that?
Because, well, John Palmer says he doesn't like enamel pots because they heat unevenly, as I'm recalling his comments. They heat unevenly and they scorch the beer, the wort. But, I brewed with enamel for 8 years, and I don't...
Made some good beer.
Yeah, so... your mileage may vary. I bet you that you could scorch beer in just about any.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think that sometimes and not just in brewing, but kind of everywhere in life, it's kind of like you want to blame the gadget when really it might be the method. Maybe you can leave the malt on the bottom a little too thick and not get it stirred up properly, and it scorches. But it can't be my fault. It must be the pot's fault. Something like that. And I don't mean to be flip, but just that. I think that sometimes we tend to do that, and we tend to want to idolize our gadgets, and we also want to blame our gadgets when things don't go right.
And there's also the loyalty, the Ford versus Chevy.
Exactly. Or Macintosh versus PC.
Exactly. Of course, we all know.
Laurel versus Hardy. Oh, wait.
Don't get us started.
Okay.
So, anyway, I'm sure that'll spark some discussion out there. But, we haven't had a problem with aluminum or enamel pots so far. If we do, we'll let you know.
Let you know.
And if you do,
let us know.
Weigh in. I mean, I'm open to suggestions here on the program.
What else you got?
In regards to your comment about airlocks in the last podcast of the year, I just wanted to say that I use vodka as the liquid in my airlocks since I generally have one carboy fermenting and one conditioning. That came from Brian in Austin, Texas. So he uses vodka. You've used
I use vodka
and maybe gin in airlocks in the past.
Yeah.
I use water.
I'm using water right now at home. I didn't have any vodka.
It's just a barrier. I guess the thought is that the alcohol will be more of a barrier to the stuff getting into the beer than just plain water.
Or whatever would get in the beer would be killed. Or you know what I mean? It's like to pass through that very toxic environment wouldn't allow anything to get through it. So, it's a little...
Personal preference.
Personal, yeah.
I don't know if there's any science behind it or not. Doesn't cost much.
Doesn't cost much.
And, they say that, well, on the last program, one of the listener had a problem with, or was wondering about his airlock because it looked like it was working backwards. And what was happening was he put warm wort that was warmer than the outside air into the fermenter, sealed it, and then as it cooled, it sucked air in and made the water look like it was going into the airlock instead of out of it. So if you put stuff in your airlock, there's a chance that it might get sucked back in. So if you're concerned about your tap water being contaminated, you might want to use vodka or pure grain alcohol or something like that that wouldn't have any bad stuff in it, probably.
And definitely nothing. You wouldn't want to put anything in your airlock that you couldn't put in your mouth. I mean, you know what I mean? Yeah. You wouldn't want to put like bleach, or some kind of or iodophor. I mean, as silly as it might sound,
that you wouldn't want to put in your beer.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point. On your December 22nd podcast, you mentioned, this is from CJ in Frederick, Maryland, by the way. On your December 22nd podcast, you'd mentioned that you had sent some beer to fellow beer podcasters. I was wondering if you or your listeners might be able to suggest the best means for sending or transporting beer to family and friends. So he's concerned about breakage, the best parcel company, and such as that. And whether it would hurt the beer if the yeast got jostled around in the bottle, perhaps requiring resettlement.
Well, it would definitely require a little resettlement.
Yeah, but it won't hurt anything.
It won't hurt anything.
It just means your beer
just leave it alone for a
be a little
days.
cloudy for for a short period of time, but it's not going to hurt anything. It might affect the flavor of some styles depending on how much sediment you've got in the bottle, but it's not going to hurt anything. I brought 3 6-packs of IPA back from Denver when we went to the Great American Beer Festival in my carry-on luggage.
A great thing to do in this post 9/11 world.
Well, they X-rayed it and everything. They had no problem with carrying the luggage or the beer on the plane. It was just darn heavy, and I was glad I had one of those rollaway things. But I wrapped it in socks and shirts and whatever's in your luggage. And it came back just fine. Of course, I was in possession of it most of the time, except for when they, it was little planes, so they took it off and packed it when I boarded.
But that actually is a good question. I've never shipped beer or had beer shipped to me, but I've had wine shipped to me. And there are occasionally I'll get a case of wine from somewhere, a winery, and it always comes in these kind of styrofoam things that are made to hold 12 bottles of wine, and there's a bottom and a top, like a stereo. They pack them in,
Right.
So my guess is that there is probably something like that out there for beer if you were, really concerned about how to package it up. I would suggest, going to the UPS store and saying, "This is what I want to do. Help me do it."
Well, they won't ship beer.
UPS won't?
Yeah, they will say, we don't ship beer.
Okay.
It's against their policy.
Somebody does.
Well, they do, but they don't know it. Now, I did get a package from Rick from Pacific Brew News Radio, which, thank you, Rick. Thank you. He's the guy that sent all the wonderful beers that we drank.
Those were great.
2-3 out in the patio, and like one of the best IPAs I've ever had came from that batch. So kudos to Rick. But there was a company up in the Northwest called Liquid Solutions, and they're a liquor store, and so they ship alcohol, and they had the container that was made for that purpose. With those 12 wonderful beers inside. But also, what I did was, when I shipped the beers out, I took a 6-pack down to Neil and Andy down at the home brewery, and they bubble wrap around the bottles, and they put styrofoam packing peanuts and really packed it up well where it wasn't going to break. And then they gave it to me, and I took it to the UPS drop here in town. And when they ask, they always ask what's inside, and I said, well, glass bottles.
And you were true.
I was true. I was not false. I was not lying. There were glass bottles inside. They were full of beer, full of homebrew. So, as I understand it, well, it's illegal, as I understand it, to ship via the U.S. Postal Service.
Now that you can't do.
But you can get away if you fudge on UPS, and I think if you fudge with FedEx, you might be able to send it too.
Well, the reason I thought that it was possible to do that is because there are places that you can be in the Beer of the Month Club, and they'll ship you so many beers, every month. I've never done it, but I see the ads in the back of like Wine Spectator magazine and all that. So I just assumed that there was a legal way to ship beer. And I know you can ship wine because I get it. So I don't know what the difference is.
Maybe they have a certain permit or something, but
be an interesting thing to find out. If anybody knows,
let us
let us know. We'll pass it on.
Dale from Morrisonville, and I don't know the state, says, I was wondering if it was possible to use a coffee grinder to crush my grains. I thought it might be a little too harsh on them. And he says, P.S. I tried your espresso porter and its conditioning in the bottle. That's from the Basic Brewing website, basicbrewing.com website. That's an award-winning beer.
Which I drank. Well, actually, I drank the coffee porter the other night. Was that the same recipe?
Yes.
You'd given me a couple at Christmas.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, good stuff.
So good luck on that. I hope the porter turns out well, Dale. I would not use a coffee grinder to crush the grains.
I wouldn't either.
Either for all grain or for steeping for an extract brew. Because coffee grinder is going to get those little teeny tiny particles in there. And that's going to get those little teeny tiny particles of husk are going to get seep through the grain bag into your wort, or be really hard to filter out in an all grain. And if you ground your grain for an all grain brew, of course you'd have to have a heck of a big coffee grinder.
I was going to say,
but you wouldn't be able to establish a grain bed well. So I would say no to the coffee grinder. Mm-hmm. Now, what you want to do if you're steeping grains, and the way we did it in our extract video was to take a rolling pin and roll
just kind of crack them open.
Right,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if you have a grain grinder or grain mill, or you could take it to your homebrew store. Whether you could use a mill that typically has two rollers, that the grain goes in between those two rollers and it kind of rolls the contents of the grain out and leaves the husks intact, hopefully, as much as possible, so that either A, they don't go through the grain bag and get into your wort as you're steeping for an extract brew, or B, you want them, if you're doing an all grain batch, you want to mill your grain so that you've got lots of big, nice husks, so that they can act as a filter bed. Drew from Elkridge, Maryland, says, I find your podcast very informative. I have a show suggestion for a future podcast. There are several ways of sparging. I think it'd be a good show to give information on batch sparging and fly sparging, pros and cons of each, as well as the how-to. I'm getting into all grain and would like alternate ways of doing all grain. And
I think we have something just for you.
Yeah, in fact, let's answer the question first, and then we can be self-promoting afterwards. Let's check our water first of all.
Yeah, watch pot never boils.
We're starting to get a little action there. Fly sparging or continuous sparging is where you start to drain the wort off of your grains, and then you start adding water at the top to replace what you're draining out, either by sprinkling or some other method. And so you're running the sparge water continuously through. And you want to take batch sparging, you want to talk about
drain it out.
Just drain it out. And then you add your sparge water, mix it up, do a Vorloff to reestablish your grain bed.
Yep.
Drain it out again. We like the batch sparging, pretty much, for most beers. Now, there are some that I would probably like to do a fly sparge on, but, I've just gotten used to doing the batch sparging.
And if it's not quite as efficient, put a little more grain in.
Exactly. You can compensate for that. Batch sparging is said to be less efficient. You don't get as much sugar out of the grain because you're not taking your time. You're not drawing the sugars out of the middle of the grain. But, doggone it, you can add just a little bit more grain at the beginning of the process and bring your efficiency back up. And we're starting to get... Should we leave the lid on or take it off? We're starting to get a little action in there. A little bit.
I'll leave it on for a little bit.
We do have something to help you in the all-grain process. And I want to make this part short because I don't want to turn this into an infomercial.
Yeah.
But this week we are releasing the preview version just to podcast listeners of the Basic Brewing Stepping into All Grain DVD.
Right.
So it's our all grain DVD where we take you through batch sparging, we take you through
fly sparging,
we take you through infusion mashing, we take you through step mashing,
all the equipment
that you need, talking about how much water you will need, and we show each of these processes in a non-linear way.
Right.
So that you start out and we talk about your grains and we show you what well-milled grains look like. And then we talk about the equipment that you'll need. And then a menu will come up and you'll get a choice.
Right.
You can either go to step mashing or infusion mashing. And you go through that process, and then we go talking about Vorloff and lautering. And you get another choice. You either have batch sparging or flash sparging. And then we come to the end.
Yeah. So that will be a great way for folks to learn all about that.
That's right. And this will be available just like this. I mean, this is the pre-release version. So this is a DVD-R. This is not a replicated disc like it will eventually be.
Right.
And it doesn't have the pretty packaging. It just has a CD jewel case. But it still works. And hopefully it works just as well as the replicated one.
Right.
I'm going to sell this for $10.
But wait, there's more.
Well, no, there's not anymore.
We'll sign it.
You want to... You're going to get us in trouble.
I know it.
If you request it, if you want us to sign it, if it's important to you, we'll sign it. But I wanted to get, number one, as a benefit to the podcast listeners, I wanted to get a cheap version of the DVD out there, and I wanted some feedback from a good focus group, and I figured that everybody out there would be a good focus group. So, for more details on the new all-grain DVD, go to basicbrewing.com/grain. So, basicbrewing.com/grain. And that'll get you to how to get your hands on the DVD. What time? Did you look at the time when we started?
No, I didn't.
While we're coming up to the boil, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back.
We're back,
and we've got our water boiling. Our 1 1/4 gallons of water that I've filtered, by the way. I'm gonna put that right there, just because. And so do
Which
we
one first?
Let's add. Well, let's wait for. Let's wait to add our extract at the end.
Okay.
Don't you think? And you want to add our third of or 0.3 ounces of.
Lovely.
There it goes. I bet you I've got a steering spoon. Now.
That's beer. I'm telling you.
Ah. Smells good.
That's mighty fine.
Yeah, Steve was saying that he did a 5-gallon batch, or maybe you want to tell us about your 5-gallon batch yesterday.
My experiment.
Your experimental batch. Since we're doing experimental batches, tell us about your experimental.
Remember back to the video podcast we did where we tested the beer, the two beers. One had the hop boiled by itself first, and then one was made more traditionally, I'll call it.
Right.
Okay. So I decided that I really liked the one where the hop was done by itself first.
In the plain water. In
plain water. So yesterday I made a light ale with hops first only. And I boiled it for, well, let's see, let me think back. I had a split boil. I had 3 gallons of water. I added 1 ounce of Haliter hops. So this was kind of a beer of stuff I had around the house.
Mulligan stew beer.
So I added 1 ounce of that. I let it boil for a half an hour. Then I added 1 pound of amber malt extract, dry malt extract. 1 pound. I and another ounce of the Haliter hops. So I've got 2 ounces of hops. I let that boil up until 15 minutes before the end of the hour-long boil. So 15 more minutes. Then I added 4.5 more pounds of light malt extract.
So you boiled 1 ounce of hops in plain water for 45 minutes.
For half an hour. Half an hour. With nothing.
Right.
Then I added 1 pound
of light dry malt extract.
Amber.
Amber malt extract.
Yeah. 15 minutes with the flavoring hops at that point. Then at 45 minutes I added 4.5 more pounds, boiled that for 15 minutes.
Huh.
So we'll see. But then I got crazy. So then we'll see how this goes. I was talking to James on the phone, and I said, boy, I would really like to make something with fruit in it. I just wanted to do that. And I was thinking about what I had, and I'd gone to the store, and they had cherries, and I guess they're in season somewhere in the world, and I thought about doing that. They were too expensive. But I remembered that I had about 1.5 gallons of peaches that I had put up in the freezer back in August, when the peaches in Arkansas are to die for good. So I thought, what the heck? So I got these peaches out, got them thawed out, sliced them, kind of thin, not real thin. I didn't pulverize them, and then I put them into the hot wort. Now this is important because you have to pasteurize the fruit somehow or another. So I put it in while I'd taken it off the boil, but the wort was still at about 190 degrees, and then let that steep. So 1.5 gallons approximately of peaches and 2 ounces of grated ginger. And so that's in the wort. And then
is this a beer or a dessert?
Well, I'm hopeful that the way I hopped it, that the sweetness will be balanced by the amount of hops I used, and that that it'll just be balanced. We'll see. Mm-hmm. It was just one of those times when it's a pretty day and you're making beer and you just say, what the heck? Let's find out what happens here. So it's now in the primary. The yeast was just a cold German ale yeast, liquid yeast, and it's happily bubbling away even as we speak. So I'll let you know how it comes out. We'll taste it on the air.
Now Steve is a cook, and a real good cook. Not by profession, but by...
Once upon a time by profession.
Well, okay.
But not for long years. Not for long years ago.
But you have a talent of taking ingredients from here, there, and everywhere, and just making something and having it come out really good.
Occasionally that happens.
Oh, all the time it happens. So it doesn't surprise me that you were just saying, hey, let's do this and let's do that. It's kind of like Sam Calagione. Is that the Dogfish Head
I don't know how to
brewer?
pronounce his name, but yeah.
I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce his name, but as I'm reading his book, and apparently according to the book, that's kind of what he does with a lot of his beers. Is he's just like, oh, let's throw currants in there.
Yeah.
And he comes up with a purple beer, and it tastes great, and it just happens to be purple. So this kind of off the wall stuff, you can come up with some really good stuff. Of course, you can come up with some stuff that's not too good. Sometimes
that can happen.
Imagine. I've told this story before. I think I was in a homebrew competition, and afterwards we were tasting some of the entries, and I pulled one out at random out of the cooler, and it was a peach basil beer.
How was that? How was the basil?
It kind of clashed with the peach.
So peach isn't herb.
Yes.
Peach isn't herb brew. For reunited light ale.
So the peach and the basil, not so good with the beer.
Well, peach and ginger is a classic. Those two ingredients are classically found together all the time. So I thought, what the heck? In the beer, we'll try it. And we'll see. Now, I do want to say this, though. What I didn't do is I didn't break any rules of sanitation. You can't change the basic rules of brewing, which is keep everything clean on the cold side, all the way through, and pay attention to the lengths of your boil, and pay attention to, how much you hop it or how little you hop it, and all those kinds of things. I mean, make a conscious decision about what you do. It's not just a random thing. It's, I'll toss in a couple of gallons of that. Mm-hmm. There should be some basis for your decisions about how you do it.
So it's not sloppy brewing, and it's not. It may be a little crazy.
Adventurous brewing.
But it's not sloppy, and
right.
It's not, I guess, irresponsible or reckless, I guess right. is the word I'm looking for.
Right.
If you do follow the basic rules of brewing, you can play around within those boundaries. But if you were to make a beer and ignore sanitation...
Wouldn't matter how good your recipe was.
You're just asking for trouble.
Right.
But playing around with ingredients and making sure that you follow the rules of adding those ingredients... sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, we're boiling our hops here, and they're boiling up pretty darn good now. one thing that I noticed is you have to keep stirring these in more than if there were wort in there. Mm-hmm. But we're going to let this boil for a while for, about 30, 40 more minutes maybe, until it's time to put in our malt extract and our
the flavoring
hops. And we'll come back.
Do we have time to have a homebrew while we're hanging around?
Oh, we could
off camera.
We could find time.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Time.
We'll be right back.
Still a little hop aroma in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but not as much.
No, not as much.
So we're at 15 minutes before the end of the boil. So let's add our.
We're going to add our malt now.
1.3.
Let you do that.
1.3 pounds of light dry malt extract.
Shall I stir?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Oh, let's turn off the fire.
Good idea.
Otherwise, we would just have a welling up of nastiness there.
A welling up of something.
A boil over is what we would have.
Yeah.
So, in fact, excuse me. Mm-hmm. Excuse my reach.
Excuse my reach.
Let me get a smaller cup here.
Oh, yeah,
so
good
that
idea.
I can kind of spoon that in there. Are you ready?
Yeah.
We'll just do this a little at a time.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Whoa. I'm making a mess.
You're making a heat wave.
And, boy, you can really tell how this stuff glops up.
Boy, no kidding.
Steam has come in contact with the sugars in the light dry malt extract, and it's becoming a caked up gob here, this cup. So you think that's calmed down enough?
Oh, yeah. I think you kind of... Yeah, it's not going to go anywhere.
Okay. Okay.
Yesterday when I was brewing, I had to really watch it. I was by myself. And I got close to the lip a couple of times. Whoa! Slow down, baby.
Now look at that. Now, what's good to do is you make sure you got something that's dippable in boiling water, but so you can clean that light dry malt extract off there.
All the malty goodness off that orange cup.
Now, for those who have been listening and not watching, I forget we're in video mode. The malt extract is glopped up on our bowl that we initially had it in, and the cup that I got out of the drawer to spoon it into the pot.
Yep, and now you're kind of cleaning that off by just dipping it in there. Won't hurt anything.
Yeah, just dip in the bowl into the wort and getting a lot of that stuff off. And now let's put that over in the sink.
Now we need to add our flavoring hops, I bet.
Yeah, let's add the heat now to get us back up to a boil. Yeah, and we'll add our 0.1 ounces, or 1/10 of an ounce of flavoring hops. And I'm going to get the washcloth here and clean up some of this extract.
Stickiness.
Because this stuff will bake on to the stove, and I will be in trouble. Is what will happen.
You'll be in double Dutch.
I'll need a double Dutch boiler. No, wait, that's something else. There you go. Now, what we will do is we will bring this back up to a boil and we'll boil it for 10 more minutes. Add our aroma hops, boil for another 5 minutes, and then we'll use probably an ice bath in the sink to cool down our wort. And then we will, we've got stuff being sanitized in an iodophor solution in the sink. And we will bring everything back together and come back for the unveiling.
Pitch.
Yeah.
The unveiling.
The pouring and the pitching. And we'll see how close we were to our target volume.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
What do you think? How much do you think we got in there? We should have marked the pan at the beginning.
I just don't know, but it reduced quite a bit.
It did.
Well, we'll see in a few minutes.
Maybe a smaller 6-pack. Maybe a 4-pack. All right, we're back. We've
cooled down our wort.
Gone through our boil. We've cooled down our wort, which cooled down
Didn't take long.
real quickly. a gallon or whatever this is cools down pretty darn quick.
Yep.
And I used my new refractometer that Santa Claus brought me. And if I'm reading this correctly and converting bricks to specific gravity, we wound up with a specific gravity of 1074?
1074.
Which is a little lighter than I expected, so we may have more volume in the brew pot than I expected.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's okay. We'll just, what comes out, comes out. This is an experiment, and, it's only a 6-pack. So, what we're going to do is we've got our gallon growler or gallon jug.
Gallon carboy.
Yeah, our little fermenter.
A junior carboy.
We've got it all marked to the 3/4 of a gallon mark, and we'll take our thermometer out of there. And this says that we're like at 74 degrees. That sounds good. So what do you think, Steve?
I think it's time to...
Think it's time to pour?
I think it's time to pour.
Well, smells good. Smells like beer. Now, if we'll watch on camera there, we can see, or if you listen on the podcast. Now, there's a screen in this funnel. I'm pouring in a big funnel.
It's pretty neat.
And the hops are going to stay at the bottom. But if we get too much hop stuff in that screen, it's going to plug. How are we coming on the volume, Steve?
It's coming up.
And can you see how we're doing?
You're doing well, but you're going to probably need all or most of that liquid to get up to the level.
All right.
Yeah, no, actually.
It's filtering our tube pretty good there.
Yeah, it's doing a good job. You've established a grain bed.
It's a hotbed.
It's a hotbed.
Yeah. In fact, what I'm going to do is pour the rest of that in there, and I've got a sanitized spoon.
Yeah.
That we'll try to move some of this stuff around in there and get the rest of that liquid in there, or most of it. Some of it. Hey,
actually, it's
hey, look at that.
Yeah, you're just about right on
Look at that level. It's we're squeezing almost all the wort out of the hops, and the level for guessing, I would say that's pretty good.
Not bad.
And once we add a little bit of starter in there,
yeah,
if I were, if this were a sport, we'd be high-fiving, I think.
But we'd probably get penalized for taunting.
for excessive celebration.
Uh-huh.
Okay, I'm going to sanitize my hand, which is clean. I'm dipping it in the iodophore solution that's in the sink.
Okay.
And what I'm going to do is aerate the wort.
Aerate away.
Now, doing this with a 5-gallon carboy,
you'd have to be a mighty big man.
Now, look, there's hardly any wort in there that's not bubblified right now.
Yeah, no kidding.
So,
wow.
And watch, it's going to spit probably when spit a little bit when I took my...
It's a little colicky.
So, I don't think it takes very long to aerate something of this size.
Okay. At least you're hoping that.
I'm going to have to rest after this. I'd call that good.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good head on that thing. And it will come down over time. Now here's our starter, and I'm going to sanitize my hand again, or my hands. And we will... I'm going to have to re-sanitize this stopper to put it back in.
Put it back in.
Here's our healthy starter in 3D. Want some starter?
Now, for you people out there in audio land, James is waving the starter bowl back in front and having fun with the camera.
In front of the close-up camera.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's got a nice frothy head on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm just, a lot of people pour it's a preference whether you just want to, well, of course I can't pour most of the liquid off the yeast and pour it in there because I'm going to use this for something else. So I'm going to mix it all up. I'm agitating the starter. And I have another funnel that's sanitized. How handy are we? I don't know. I'm just going to guesstimate how much. Hope Dave Logston's not watching. I'm going to guesstimate how much starter that we need for this 1 gallon. Whoa, we're frothing over.
Yeah, we're frothing over. What do you think? A few tablespoons?
Yeah, a few tablespoons. A couple of glops. Now hopefully the yeast starter will make its way down past all the foam there. Boy, what a mess. Okay, I'm going to put that over there. Care for a dollop of foam, Steve?
It looks like a meringue pie.
It's got a good head on it. Got good head retention on on our little carboy there, our little jug. And I'm going to wipe away from the mouth of the lid there. And I've got my hands sanitized again. And I'm going to just mix the yeast in there just a bit more to get us going. And, okay, I've got a little stopper here. I'm continuously dipping my hands in the sanitizer.
We'll need some lotion when we're done.
Yeah.
Your skin will be falling off.
Plus, I've got brewer's hands. It's wintertime.
Yeah.
So we've got our... And I use the 2-piece airlock for primary fermentation because if this glops up, it's a whole lot easier to clean out. And I need a little... It's handy doing this right here in the kitchen. Got all my stuff.
All your stuff.
And I just use water.
It's like me yesterday brewing outside. I forgot this.
Running.
I forgot that.
Running in and out and in and out. Okay. I put the airlock on. I filled it up with a little bit of water. And then there we have our beer.
6-pack and 2.
A 6-pack and 2, an 8-pack.
An 8-pack.
And of course, by the time we take hydrometer reading at the end of primary fermentation, and I'm going to rack it into a secondary one of these, the same thing. It's a 1-gallon jug.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to do some dry hopping. I bought some whole Cascade hops today at the homebrew store, and I'm going to I haven't figured out how much I'm going to use for dry hopping 1 gallon of beer.
Yeah.
But be a good opportunity to dry hop with proportionally a whole bunch of hops. So, well, that's it.
That's it.
Well, Steve, I appreciate your help.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me today.
I hope just pardon my squishy hand there. This has been fun for me. I hope it's been fun for you, and I hope it's been fun for everybody listening and watching. And we will let you know how this turns out.
This is a gas. I like it.
So let us know what you think of this concept of the combined podcast video audio thing, and let us know how we're doing, and we will make modifications and on your suggestions if we need to, and get better as we go along. But I appreciate everybody who's made comments on the iTunes podcast directory in the iTunes music store. Appreciate it.
That's great.
Appreciate your help. Until then, if you have questions or suggestions, you know where to reach us at james@basicbrewing.com, or just fill out the contact form on basicbrewing.com. And as usual, our podcast is produced technically, at least the website is, by Kelly Dotson, and produced by Active Voicing.
Active Voicing.
So we will see you next time.
Hoppy trails.